I don't understand why men get so offended by honesty. Like, genuinely. I wasn't insulting him. I was just being realistic. Real talk, you know? The kind of conversation adults should be able to have without turning into children throwing tantrums. Experience matters. Skill matters. These are facts, not opinions. Facts. Everyone has a past. Everyone. And I just happened to mention that my ex knew what he was doing. That's it. That's literally all I said. Well, okay, I said he was a 10-10, but that was just me being fair and objective. I'm not going to lie about reality just to protect someone's fragile ego. And honestly, saying someone is still learning isn't even an insult. It's the opposite. It means they have potential. It means they can grow. It means I see a future where they improve. How is that bad? I was actually trying to motivate him, if you think about it. If he wanted to get better, he could have asked questions. He could have been curious. He could have said, "Hey, what did you like? How can I learn?" But no. Instead, he had to make it about his pride. Men and their egos, I swear. I didn't say I wanted my ex back. I never said that. Not once. I just acknowledged that he was a 10-10. Because he was. Facts are facts. Am I supposed to pretend the sky isn't blue just because it makes someone uncomfortable? Look, I'm a person who values truth. I value transparency. I think relationships should be built on honesty, not sugarcoating everything to avoid hurt feelings. If we can't be real with each other, what's the point? So, yeah, I told the truth. And apparently, that was my crime. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. Okay, let me back up. We were at home. It was a normal evening, or at least it started that way. We'd had a small argument earlier, nothing major. Just one of those little disagreements couples have. I don't even remember what it was about. Probably something stupid like what to watch on Netflix, or whose turn it was to do dishes. But the vibe was off. He was being quiet. Moody. You know that thing guys do where they pretend everything's fine, but you can tell they're stewing about something? Yeah, that. I was on my phone, scrolling through social media, trying to ignore the weird energy. And honestly, I was kind of irritated. Like, if you have a problem, say it. Don't sit there radiating passive-aggressive energy and expect me to play therapist. So I said it. Casually. Just threw it out there. Look, my ex was just better. Like objectively. He was a 10-10. You're still learning. I expected him to laugh. Or maybe get a little defensive and make a joke about it. Or maybe, ideally, take it as constructive criticism and actually try to step up his game. You know, use it as motivation. Instead, silence. Complete silence. He just looked at me. For way too long. The kind of look that makes your skin prickle a little, even if you won't admit it. Then he said one word. Okay. That's it. Just okay. And somehow that single word unsettled me more than if he'd started yelling. There was something in his voice. Something calm. Too calm. Like a door closing. He stood up and grabbed his keys from the counter. I frowned. Where are you going? He didn't look at me when he answered. Helping you learn. What the heck did that even mean? Okay, full transparency here. This wasn't the first time I'd mentioned it. I mean, I'd joked about his inexperience before. A few times. Maybe more than a few. But it was always light, you know. Teasing. Couples tease each other. That's normal. And yeah, I'd compared him to my ex once or twice. Or a handful of times. But only when it was relevant. Only when the comparison actually made sense in context. The first time was probably 2 months into our relationship. We were watching a movie, one of those romantic comedies, and the guy in the movie did something smooth and romantic. I laughed and said, my ex used to do stuff like that all the time. He got quiet. I noticed, but I thought he was just being sensitive. Then there was the time we were out with friends, and someone mentioned relationships. I might have said something like, well, my ex really knew how to plan dates. Like, really plan them. It was impressive. My boyfriend smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I told myself I was just being conversational, sharing my experiences, being open about my past. Then came the comments during intimate moments. Little things. My ex used to do this thing. Or, have you thought about trying? Followed by a description of something my ex did. I thought I was helping, giving direction, being communicative about what I liked. I didn't see his face each time, didn't notice how he pulled away a little, how the light in his eyes dimmed just a fraction. Or maybe I did see it, and I just didn't want to acknowledge it, because acknowledging it would mean I was doing something wrong. And I wasn't wrong. I was just being honest, open, transparent about my needs and desires and experiences. That's what healthy relationships are built on, right? Communication? Except I wasn't communicating. I was comparing. Constantly. Relentlessly. Without even realizing how deep the cuts went. Every compliment I gave my ex was a criticism of him. Every memory I shared was a reminder that someone else had been there first. Every standard I set was impossible to meet because it wasn't really about the action. It was about the person who'd done it before. But I couldn't see that then. Wouldn't see it. I was too busy being honest. Like one time, my ex's name came up when I was talking to friends, and someone asked how he was, and I said, "Oh, he was great. Like really great. Top tier." And my boyfriend overheard and got weird about it. But what was I supposed to do, lie? Pretend my ex was terrible when he wasn't? I'd said things like, "You'll get there eventually," and "practice makes perfect," because I genuinely believed he could improve. I was being encouraging, supporting his growth journey, and, okay, yes, maybe I laughed a couple times when friends made jokes about my ex. But that was just being a good sport. I wasn't going to be one of those people who gets all defensive and awkward when their past comes up. But I was honest. I was transparent. I didn't hide anything. If anything, I was too honest. That's my problem. I'm too real for most people. What I'm not going to mention here, because it's not relevant, is how often I might have brought up my ex during intimate moments. Like, if something reminded me of what he used to do, I might have casually mentioned it, just as a reference point, for educational purposes. But that's not important. The point is, I was always honest with him. And apparently, honesty isn't what he wanted. He walked out to the car without saying anything else. I stood there for a second, confused, then grabbed my jacket and followed him. I assumed he needed to cool off. Go for a drive, clear his head. Whatever. I got in the passenger seat. He started the car, still silent. I tried to break the tension. You know, if you're going to be sensitive about feedback, we need to talk about that. Adults should be able to communicate. Nothing, not even a glance. I rolled my eyes and pulled out my phone. Fine. If he wanted to sulk, let him sulk. I wasn't going to beg him to talk. We drove for maybe 10 minutes. I wasn't really paying attention to where we were going. I was scrolling Instagram, checking messages, whatever. But then I noticed the streets looked familiar. Too familiar. My stomach did this weird little flip. I looked up, looked around. My brain started connecting dots I didn't want to connect. Why are we going this way? My voice came out sharper than I intended. He kept his eyes on the road. His voice was calm, too calm. You said he was a 10-10, let's confirm. My heart stopped. What? You heard me? No, no way. He wasn't serious. This was just him being dramatic, trying to scare me or teach me a lesson or something. But he didn't turn around. He kept driving. Straight toward the neighborhood I used to know way too well. He parked the car, right in front of the building, my ex's building. I felt my face go hot, then cold, then hot again. My hand started shaking. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I looked at the familiar brick facade, the green awning, the same entrance I'd walked through hundreds of times when we were together. The memories flooded back, unwelcome and overwhelming. Late nights coming back from dates, early mornings sneaking out, arguments in the parking lot, makeups on the stairs. And now I was here again. But everything was different. Everything was wrong. "You're not serious." I forced a laugh, but it sounded wrong, shaky, nervous, the kind of laugh that betrays fear even as it tries to mask it. He turned off the engine. The silence that followed was deafening, just the sound of my breathing, fast, panicked. He got out of the car, walked around to my side, each step deliberate, measured, like he'd rehearsed this. Opened my door. The cool evening air hit my face. I could smell rain coming, the same smell that used to mean running inside with my ex, laughing, soaked. Now it just smelled like doom. "Go on." 2 words, said so calmly, like he was inviting me to step out of the car for a nice dinner, not delivering me to the scene of my own humiliation. I stared at him, really looked at him, searched his face for any sign that this was a bluff, a scare tactic, something he'd back down from if I called it, but there was nothing. No anger, no hurt, just resolution. "What is wrong with you?" My voice came out louder than I intended, shrill, desperate. His face was completely neutral. No anger, no hurt, just nothing. And somehow that was worse than if he'd been screaming at me. Anger I could match. Anger I could fight against. Anger I could make myself the victim of. But this calm, measured decision, there was nothing to fight, nothing to defend against. He'd already made up his mind, and nothing I said was going to change it. "You keep comparing. I'm done competing." The words hit me like physical blows, each one precise, aimed. "This is insane. You're being insane right now." Even as I said it, I knew how it sounded. Defensive, desperate, like someone who knows they're wrong but can't admit it. He didn't respond to the accusation, didn't defend himself, didn't explain. He just walked to the back of the car, popped the trunk, and pulled out my suitcase. My suitcase, the one I kept in the closet, the blue one with the broken wheel that I kept meaning to fix. My brain started racing. When had he done this? While I was in the shower? This morning before I woke up? Last night while I slept? How long had he been planning this? And more importantly, how had I not noticed anything was wrong? I didn't even know he'd packed it. When did he pack it? How did I not notice? But I knew the answer to that. I hadn't noticed because I wasn't paying attention, wasn't really seeing him, was too busy comparing him to someone else to notice the man right in front of me, slowly reaching his breaking point. My brain couldn't process what was happening. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. He was supposed to get defensive, argue, try to prove himself. That's what men did when you criticized them. They tried harder. They didn't just quit. "What are you doing?" My voice cracked. He didn't answer, just walked toward the building entrance, carrying my suitcase like it weighed nothing. Like I weighed nothing. Like everything we'd built together weighed nothing at all. I scrambled out of the car, my legs feeling weird and unstable. "Stop, stop, this isn't funny." He kept walking. I followed him, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. He found the apartment number like he'd looked it up beforehand, which meant he'd planned this, actually planned this, sat down, maybe last night, maybe this morning, and looked up my ex's address. Decided this was the solution. Packed my suitcase, thought through every step, and I'd been completely oblivious. Too busy scrolling my phone, too busy thinking about myself, too busy existing in my own little bubble where my words didn't have real consequences. He knocked. 3 calm, measured knocks. The sound echoed in the hallway, in my chest, in my entire body. This was really happening. Don't, I whispered. My voice had gone small, childlike. Please don't do this. Part of me was bargaining. If he would just stop now, walk away, we could talk about this. I could apologize. We could fix it. But another part of me knew. We were past that point. We'd been past it for a while. I just hadn't been paying attention. He didn't look at me. Footsteps approached from inside. My heart was hammering so hard I felt dizzy. The hallway seemed to tilt slightly. The door opened, and there he was, my ex. He looked exactly the same. Same dark hair, same stubble, same flannel shirt he always wore on weekends. For a second, we just stared at each other. Him looking confused, concerned, his eyes moving from me to my current boyfriend, to the suitcase and back again, trying to piece together what was happening. What's going on? His voice. I'd forgotten his voice. The exact tone and timbre of it, and hearing it now, in this context, made everything so much worse. My boyfriend's voice was perfectly even, professional almost, like he was delivering a package, not a person. She says you're a 10-10, I'm still learning. Thought I'd send her to the expert. The silence that followed felt like it lasted hours. I watched my ex's face change, saw the confusion shift to understanding, then to something worse. Pity. He felt sorry for both of us, the look on my ex's face. I'll never forget it. Pure discomfort, embarrassment, the kind you feel when you witness someone else's relationship falling apart and you're somehow involved but didn't ask to be. He actually took a step back, creating physical distance from the situation he'd been unwillingly dragged into. Dude, this is messed up. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to my boyfriend, man to man, acknowledging that this whole thing was wrong. And it was wrong. It was public humiliation. It was cruel. But was it more cruel than what I'd been doing? More cruel than the constant comparisons, the endless measuring, the death by 1,000 cuts of being told you'll never be good enough? My boyfriend nodded. Exactly. One word, agreement, acknowledgement that yes, this was messed up, and that was the point. Then he turned to me, really looked at me. For the first time all evening, he actually looked me in the eyes, and I saw everything there. The hurt, the disappointment, the love that had worn itself out trying to be enough, and said, "Don't come back until you stop grading people you claim to love." The words landed like stones, each one heavy, solid, undeniable. Grading people you claim to love. Is that what I'd been doing? Yes, of course it was. I'd turned our relationship into a performance review, turned him into a student who could never quite make the honor roll because I kept changing the requirements. He set the suitcase down at my feet. The thud it made was final, definitive. Turned around and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hallway, getting quieter, disappearing around the corner. Just like that. No yelling, no dramatic confrontation, no last-minute confession or plea. Just done. I stood there, frozen, watching him get in the car, watching him drive away, the taillights disappearing around the corner, red lights fading into the darkness, taking with them any chance I had to fix this. Behind me, my ex cleared his throat awkwardly. Look, I don't know what's happening here, but I should go. The words tumbled out automatically. Where would I go? I had no idea. But staying here in this hallway, with both of them having rejected me, was unbearable. Yeah, probably. He wasn't being mean, just honest. This was awkward for him too. He didn't ask for any of this. He closed the door, gently but firmly. Not a slam. That would have been easier somehow. Anger is easier to process than gentle dismissal. And I was alone in the hallway with my suitcase, rejected by both of them, my phone in my hand and nowhere to go. The hallway was quiet, just the hum of fluorescent lights, the distant sound of traffic outside, and me, standing there with everything I'd said finally having consequences I couldn't talk my way out of. I ended up calling my friend Sarah. She came and picked me up. Didn't ask too many questions, which I appreciated. Well, she asked one. Do you need me to ask questions, or do you need me to just drive? Just drive. She nodded and pulled away from the curb. I watched my ex's building disappear in the side mirror. The place where I'd just been rejected twice in the span of 5 minutes. Once by a man who'd loved me and couldn't anymore. Once by a man who used to love me and had moved on. I stayed on her couch for 3 days. 3 days of replaying everything in my head. 3 days of checking my phone every 5 minutes to see if he'd texted. He hadn't. The silence was worse than anything he could have said. Sarah's apartment became my refuge and my prison. I'd wake up on her couch, momentarily forget what happened, then remember and feel the weight of it all over again. Day 1 was denial. This wasn't real. He'd cool off and text me. We'd laugh about how dramatic it all was. He'd apologize for taking it so far. Day 2 was anger. How dare he humiliate me like that? How dare he air our private relationship issues in front of my ex? Who did he think he was? Day 3 was when the cracks started showing. Sarah finally asked me what happened on day 2. I told her everything. Well, my version of everything. I told her about the comparison, about him overreacting, about the dramatic drive to my ex's apartment. I framed it all very carefully. Made sure she understood that I'd just been honest, that he'd been too sensitive, that the whole thing was blown out of proportion. She listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, her face neutral. When I finished, I expected her to be on my side, to say, wow, he really overreacted, or that's so extreme. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. Too long. Then she said, so you kept telling him your ex was better? Not what I expected. I was being honest. About what? About wishing you were still with your ex? No, I never said that. But you kept bringing him up. Because it was relevant. She gave me this look, this sad, disappointed look that made me feel like I was being seen for the first time in days. Really seen. Was it, though? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because somewhere deep down, in a place I didn't want to look at, I knew the answer. No, it wasn't relevant. It was never relevant. I was bringing up my ex because it gave me power, control. A way to keep my current boyfriend slightly off balance, slightly unsure, slightly desperate to prove himself. And I told myself it was honesty when really it was manipulation wrapped in transparency. I typed so many messages to him, deleted them all. I'm sorry, deleted. You overreacted, deleted. Can we talk? Deleted. I didn't mean it like that. Deleted. You embarrassed me. Deleted. I miss you. Deleted. You're right. Deleted. What was I supposed to say? That I was wrong? That I'd been cruel without even realizing it? That I'd taken someone who loved me and made him feel like he'd never be good enough? That the reason I kept comparing him to my ex wasn't because my ex was actually better, but because I was scared of being vulnerable with someone new? That grading him like a performance review was easier than admitting I was falling in love with him and didn't know how to handle it? No, I couldn't say any of that. Because that would mean looking at myself honestly. And I wasn't ready. My ex texted me the next day. I was lying on Sarah's couch, staring at the ceiling, when my phone buzzed. For a split second, I thought it might be him. My boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend? I didn't even know what to call him anymore. But it wasn't. Hey, that was awkward. You okay? I stared at the message for 20 minutes before responding. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. What was I supposed to say? That I was humiliated, confused, that I'd somehow lost both of them in one night. I'm fine. 2 words. The biggest lie I'd told all week. What happened with you two? I don't want to talk about it. The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Fair. For what it's worth, he seemed like a good guy. Even in that weird situation, he wasn't mean about it. Just done. I read that message over and over. Just done. 2 words that somehow said everything. My ex, who'd been through our entire relationship, who'd seen me at my best and worst, could see it, could see what I'd done to someone else. He'd reached his limit, not with anger, not with drama, just with quiet finality. And the worst part, I'd pushed him there, every comparison, every joke about his inexperience. Every time I brought up my ex in bed or in conversation or in my head. Every time I said my ex used to, or my ex would, or my ex knew how to. Every single time. I'd made him feel like a contestant in a competition he didn't sign up for, a competition he couldn't win because the rules kept changing, because I held the scoring card and refused to give him a perfect score no matter what he did. And he'd finally stopped competing. I kept reading my ex's message. He seemed like a good guy. Past tense. My ex was already referring to him in the past tense. Like our relationship was already over. Like it was ancient history. And maybe it was. Maybe it had been over for weeks, and I was just too self-absorbed to notice. I thought about all the times my boyfriend had gone quiet when I mentioned my ex. All the times his smile had faded when I made a comparison. All the times he'd changed the subject when I started a sentence with, "My ex used to." I'd told myself he was being insecure, oversensitive, that he needed to get over it. But what if I was the problem? What if every time I brought up my ex, I was telling him, "You're not enough. You'll never be enough. No matter what you do, someone was here first, and he'll always be the standard you can't meet." I typed back to my ex. Yeah, he was. Was. Past tense. I deleted it. Typed, yeah, he is. Deleted that too. Finally sent, thanks. The conversation ended there, both of us knowing what I'd lost, both of us knowing I'd thrown it away. Both of us knowing that honesty was never the problem. Cruelty disguised as honesty was. On day 4, Sarah sat down next to me on the couch. I was scrolling through old photos of us, my boyfriend and me, smiling, happy. Or at least, I thought we were happy. Now I wondered if he was ever truly happy, or if he was just hoping that eventually I'd stop comparing him to someone else. I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. I looked up from my phone, set it down. I braced myself. Sarah wasn't the type to sugarcoat things. We'd been friends since college. She'd seen me through breakups before. She knew when to comfort and when to confront. This was going to be a confrontation. You were mean to him. The words hit harder than I expected. I was honest. No, you were mean. Honesty doesn't mean saying every thought that crosses your mind. Honesty doesn't mean making someone you love feel inadequate over and over. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't, but intent doesn't erase impact. You hurt him, repeatedly. And he finally decided he deserved better. My throat tightened. I didn't think I was hurting him. Did you ask? Did you ever stop and ask how it made him feel when you compared him to your ex? I opened my mouth, closed it. No, I hadn't asked. I'd assumed he understood, assumed he knew I didn't mean anything by it, assumed he was secure enough to handle it. I'd assumed a lot of things, none of them true. Tears started forming. I blinked them back hard. He loves you, Sarah continued, or loved you. I don't know which tense to use, but he got tired of feeling compared, tired of feeling measured, tired of never being enough. I never said he wasn't enough. You didn't have to say it. You showed it, every single time. How? By being honest about my past? Sarah sighed, ran her hand through her hair, looked at me with something between frustration and compassion. No, by using your past as a weapon. Every time you brought up your ex, you were telling him, this is the standard. This is what I expect. This is what you're failing to be. That's not what I meant. I know, but that's what you communicated. And after a while, it doesn't matter what you meant. What matters is how you made him feel. And you made him feel like he was in a constant competition with a ghost. The tears started sliding down my face. I hated that she was right, hated that I couldn't defend myself, hated that my version of the story, the one where I was the victim, didn't hold up under scrutiny. I didn't want to hurt him. I believe you, but you did, and now you have to decide what to do about it. What can I do? He won't even talk to me. Maybe he shouldn't. Maybe you need to sit with this, really sit with it. Figure out why you kept doing it, why you needed to keep him feeling less than. I didn't need. Yes, you did, because if he felt confident, if he felt secure, if he felt like he was enough, then what? Then you might actually have to be vulnerable, have to fully commit, have to risk being hurt. I wiped my face roughly. You think I was protecting myself? I think you were terrified. And instead of facing that fear, you kept one foot out the door. Kept reminding him and yourself that someone else existed. Someone you could run back to if this didn't work out. But I didn't want to run back to my ex. Didn't you? Because you sure talked about him enough. You kept him alive in your relationship, kept him present, kept him as an option, whether you consciously meant to or not. I couldn't respond to that, because deep down, I knew she might be right. My ex had been my safety net, my backup plan, my way of never having to fully invest in something new, and my boyfriend had seen it, had felt it, had lived with it until he couldn't anymore. But here's the thing, even knowing all that, even crying on Sarah's couch, even replaying his face when he said, "I'm done competing," I still felt defensive. Part of me still thought I was just being honest. Why is honesty wrong? Part of me still thought he overreacted. Taking me to my ex's door was extreme. Part of me still thought I wasn't trying to hurt him. My intentions were good. And that's the part I hated most. The part that wouldn't let me fully own what I'd done. The part that kept finding excuses. The part that wanted to be the victim in my own story. I spent days thinking about what Sarah said, about how I used my ex as a weapon, about how I kept one foot out the door, and I realized she was right. But knowing that and changing it, two completely different things. I thought about past relationships, not just this one, not just my ex. There was always someone I compared to someone else, always a scorecard in my head, always a measurement system that nobody asked for. With my ex, I'd compared him to the guy before him, the one who'd been more spontaneous, more adventurous, and before that, I'd compared that guy to someone else, someone who'd been more stable, more reliable. There was always someone who did something better, always a former standard to meet, always a ghost in the room. I told myself it was just having standards, knowing what I wanted, being clear about my needs. But it wasn't that at all. It was fear. Fear of fully investing, fear of being vulnerable without a backup plan, fear of loving someone completely and them leaving anyway. So I kept everyone at arm's length, kept them trying, kept them feeling like they might lose me if they didn't step up. And I convinced myself it was honesty. I sat with that realization for hours. Sarah had gone to bed. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. I pulled up old text conversations with my ex, scrolled through them, found the moments where I'd done it to him too. My ex was so good at planning surprises. The last guy I dated always knew how to make me laugh. I'm used to guys who are more assertive. He'd responded with jokes, with self-deprecating humor, with promises to try harder, and eventually, he'd stopped responding at all. I'd thought he was tired of me. Turns out, he was tired of competing with shadows. Just like my current boyfriend. Just like whoever came next would be. Because the problem wasn't them. It never was. The problem was me. And the truly terrifying part? I didn't know how to stop. The comparing was automatic, reflexive. like breathing. I'd see something and immediately think, my ex did this better, or this guy would never, or I'm settling. Even when I didn't say it out loud, I was thinking it. And people can feel that. They can feel when they're being measured against someone else, when they're being graded, when they're not quite enough. My boyfriend had felt it every single day, and he'd tried so hard, tried to be better, tried to measure up, tried to win a game where the rules changed every time he got close to winning. Until he finally realized the game was rigged from the start, because I wasn't comparing him to my ex's actual qualities. I was comparing him to an idealized memory, a selective highlight reel. The best moments of a relationship that had ended for good reasons, I conveniently forgot when making comparisons. My ex wasn't actually a 10-10, nobody is. My ex had his flaws, his problems, his ways of hurting me. That's why we broke up. But in my memory, in my comparisons, he was perfect, and my boyfriend could never compete with perfect. Nobody could. I created an impossible standard and then punished him for not meeting it, and called it honesty, called it transparency, called it communication. When really, it was just cruelty wrapped in self-righteousness. On day 7, my phone buzzed. His name on the screen made my heart jump. I opened it immediately. I hope you're safe and okay. I'm not angry at you. I'm just tired. Tired of feeling like I'll never measure up. Tired of competing with a ghost. Tired of being graded instead of loved. You deserve someone who makes you happy, and I deserve someone who doesn't make me feel like a permanent disappointment. I think we both know this isn't working. Take care of yourself. I read it 10 times, 20 times. Each time the words hit differently. Not angry. Tired. Competing with a ghost. Graded instead of loved. He wasn't being mean. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was just done. And he was letting me go with kindness I hadn't earned. I wanted to respond. Wanted to apologize. Wanted to promise I'd change. But I knew it was too late. And honestly, I wasn't sure I could change. Not really. Not in the way he needed. So here I am. Single. On my friend's couch. Telling this story like I'm the victim. I didn't cheat, I tell people who ask what happened. I didn't touch my ex. I didn't do anything wrong. I was just being honest. And technically, all of that is true. But it's also completely beside the point. I didn't cheat with my body, but I cheated emotionally. Every time I brought up my ex. Every time I made comparisons. Every time I treated my boyfriend like he was in training for a role my ex had already mastered. I was dishonest in the worst way. I told him I loved him while making him feel like he'd never be good enough. I wiped my face, angry at myself for crying again. I didn't think honesty would cost me my relationship, I say out loud to no one. But deep down, I know the truth. It wasn't honesty that cost me. It was cruelty disguised as honesty. It was using transparency as an excuse to be thoughtless. It was confusing being real with being hurtful, and he finally stopped accepting it. I whispered to the empty room. He didn't have to take it that far. Still blaming him, still playing the victim, still refusing to look in the mirror and see who I really was in that relationship. A person who confused honesty with kindness. A person who thought love meant never having to filter your thoughts. A person who graded someone instead of loving them. And now I'm alone. With my suitcase. With my phone full of unsent apologies. With the memory of 2 men who both rejected me in the same hallway. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? A tiny voice in my head still whispers, but I wasn't wrong about my ex being a 10-10. And that voice tells me everything I need to know about why I'm sitting here alone. That voice is why he left. That voice is why he had to take me to that door. Because I needed to see, physically see, what I'd been doing to him emotionally. I needed to stand in that hallway, rejected by both of them, holding a suitcase I didn't pack, facing the consequences of words I thought were harmless. He took me to my ex's door because words weren't enough anymore. Because I'd proven over and over that I wouldn't hear him. So he showed me instead, and now I understand. But understanding doesn't change anything. He's still gone. I'm still here, and I still catch myself thinking about my ex. Still measuring, still comparing, still grading. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe I'm not ready for the kind of love he was offering. The kind that doesn't keep score. The kind that doesn't need constant comparison. The kind that accepts someone as they are, not as who they might become with enough criticism and honesty. I pull out my phone one more time, open the message thread, type, "You were right. About everything. I'm sorry." Stare at it for 5 minutes. Delete it. Because even now, even after everything, I'm not sure I mean it. Not really. Not enough to change. And that's the most honest thing I've thought in weeks. I lean back on the couch, close my eyes, and wonder how long I'll keep doing this to myself. Keep doing this to people who try to love me. Keep hiding behind honesty when what I really mean is I'm too scared to be vulnerable, so I'll just keep you at arm's length by reminding you you're not good enough. The answer? I don't know, but probably too long. Probably until someone else decides they're done competing. Probably until I'm alone enough times that I finally look in the mirror and face the person staring back. That person who thinks she's honest. That person who thinks she's just being real. That person who's actually just scared. Scared of being hurt. Scared of being vulnerable. Scared of loving someone without keeping an escape route ready. Because if I keep comparing him to my ex, I never have to fully commit. Never have to fully love. Never have to fully risk. And he saw that. Saw right through me. And decided he deserved better. He was right. He did. He does. And maybe someday I'll be ready to admit that out loud. But not today. Today I'm still the girl who got dropped at her ex's door with a suitcase. Still the girl who thinks she was just being honest. Still the girl who doesn't quite understand why honesty wasn't enough. Even though, deep down, I do understand. I just don't want to. The end. Character count, 18,547. I told this story to make myself feel better, to make myself the victim, to justify what I did. But every time I tell it, I hear his voice. I'm done competing. And I know exactly what I lost, and why I lost it, and whose responsibility it was to prevent it. Mine. All mine. But admitting that feels like losing twice. So instead, I'll tell the story again. To someone new, who'll listen and nod and say he overreacted, and I'll agree, and I'll feel better, for a little while, until I'm alone again, with just my thoughts, and the truth I keep running from, the truth that honesty without kindness is just cruelty, that transparency without care is just selfishness, that loving someone means protecting them, not comparing them, and I failed. Failed him, failed us, failed myself. But saying I was just being honest is so much easier than saying I was scared of loving you fully, so I kept reminding you that someone else existed, someone I could always run back to if you disappointed me. So I'll stick with the first version. The comfortable lie. The one where I'm honest and he's sensitive, where I'm real and he's insecure, where I'm the victim and he's the one who overreacted. It's easier that way. Easier than growth. Easier than change. Easier than becoming the person who deserves the love I lost. And that's the real tragedy. Not that he left, but that I'll probably let it happen again. Because I still don't really believe I was wrong. I just believe I got caught. And next time, I'll be more careful. More subtle. Won't say 10-10 out loud. Won't make the comparison so obvious. But they'll still be there. In my head, in my heart. In the space between us that I create to protect myself. And eventually, whoever's next will feel it too. That distance, that measurement, that constant grading, and they'll leave too. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll stay. and accept being second place, being still learning, being compared forever. And honestly, that might be worse, because then I'll never have to face myself, never have to grow, never have to admit that the problem isn't them. It's me. It was always me. But admitting that means changing, and changing is hard. Harder than losing someone, harder than sitting on this couch, harder than anything. So I won't. I'll just keep telling the story, keep playing the victim, keep insisting I was just being honest, until one day, maybe, I'll actually believe it, or until I run out of people willing to compete. Whichever comes first. Probably the second one. Definitely the second one. And I'll deserve it. Every single bit of it. But I'm not ready to admit that yet. Not out loud. Not to anyone. Not even to myself. So I'll end this story the way I started it. I don't understand why men get so offended by honesty. And maybe someday I will understand. But not today. Today I'm still right. Still justified. Still the victim. And he's still gone. And my ex still closed that door. And I'm still here, alone, with my honesty, and my pride, and my suitcase, and absolutely nothing else.